Silly season is about to begin as Stewart-Haas Racing could be merging with Ferrari Motorsports for 2025. Hyundai is interested in joining NASCAR, and Dale Jr. finally announced they'll be joining TNT in Amazon. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports story discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight those really quickly. First, going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and just show them straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Carson Motorsports 2024 security throwback scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Darlington. This looks alright in my opinion. It does look good. It's a tribute to the police force. It looks pretty good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Los Allen's 2024 Ricky Schlick throwback that we're going to see at Darlington. This looks solid in my opinion. Really nice look at throwback. It's got some good colors. I think they did a solid job on the scheme. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tanner Gray's 2024 NHRA scheme, which is a throwback to his 2018 Pro Stock Championship scheme. This looks alright in my opinion, kind of a normal paint scheme, kind of blank, but it does give a vintage look to NHRA. It's alright in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2024 BAMF Enterprises scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Darlington, his fifth and final truck start of the season. Scheme looks pretty good in my opinion. Gives it kind of that feeling of NOS energy or something like that Kyle Busch used to have. It looks pretty solid. Looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Stuart Friesen's 2024 Jimmy Johnson throwback, which is a throwback to Jimmy Johnson's 2010 Power of the Pride scheme. This looks great in my opinion. Halmer did a really nice looking job on it. It's absolutely amazing. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Shane Van Gisbergen's 2024 Quad Lock Marcus Ambrose throwback that we're going to see at Darlington. This is the best throwback I've seen so far for Xfinity and top 5 for sure in all series this year. It's amazing. Been wanting a Marcus Ambrose throwback for a very long time. This is beautiful. It's gorgeous. It looks incredible. They did an absolute great job. Kyle Sykes and the team over there did an absolutely amazing job on the SVG's throwback. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cole Custer's 2024 Johnny Sauter throwback. This looks great. Simplicity is a great thing. This looks phenomenal. Looks like the Johnny Sauter car from 2006. It looks absolutely amazing. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2024 Mark Martin throwback to Mark Martin's 2004 Budweiser shootout scheme. This is definitely the best one they've done at JTG Doherty for a long time. This looks great. They did a fantastic job. The Oscar Mayer colors look awesome. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Darlington. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2024 Brandt throwback. I'll be honest, the rendering doesn't look great on this. It'll probably look a lot better on the racetrack once it gets on track on Friday or Saturday. It doesn't look amazing from the very render, but it'll probably look better on the racetrack. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Zane Smith's 2024 Dave Marcus throwback. Very simple. Simplicity is always great. Looks amazing. They did a really awesome job. I love the vintage Dave Marcus scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Hill's 2024 Bennett throwback to the 50-year anniversary. I'm going to be real and honest, they've ran this already. It's okay. I just wish they did a little more creativity. RCR hasn't done a great job with their throwbacks outside of Austin Dillon's. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dawson Cram's 2024 Paul Wireman scheme that we'll see for Throwback Week. Looks solid in my opinion. It's got some good looking colors. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Darlington. It looks pretty good. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lena Honeyman's 2024 Kyle Petty throwback to the mellow yellow scheme. Absolutely perfect. Young's Motorsports nailed it. Looks amazing. Colors look great. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Darlington. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Spencer Boyd's 2024 Buck Baker throwback to a vintage scheme. Decent in my opinion. Not perfect by any stretch of imagination, but it definitely does get the job done for sure. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2024 Busch throwback to some old school looking Busch schemes. This is phenomenal. They did an amazing job on this. Kyle Sykes knows how to do a great job on these throwbacks. This one's no exception. It is absolutely beautiful and looks great. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lane Riggs' 2024 Scott Riggs throwback, which is a tribute scheme to his father. Looks good in my opinion. Love the colors on it. They did an amazing job and glad to see Lanes is doing a throwback to his father. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Nick Sanchez's 2024 Rev throwback to the 20 years of the Drive for Diversity program. Looks solid in my opinion. I love the tribute. It looks good. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack at Darlington. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kaz Grall's 2024 Parnelli Jones throwback. Pretty plain, but pretty simplistic. It's alright in my opinion. They definitely could have done a better job, but in my opinion, it does look decent. Looking forward to see on the racetrack this weekend. at Darlington. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Milwaukee. As their title sponsor has been revealed, it's going to be called the Liuena 175. Liuena, of course, sponsors Tyler Ankrum in the Truck Series, and they also have sponsored multiple other races in the past as well. Interesting branding for sure, but glad to see that Liuena will be sponsoring the Truck Series race at Milwaukee. It's a pretty nice looking thing, and it's nice to see Liuena sponsoring as well. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Wendy's. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday, that Carl Loretto has left Wendy's to become president of Pizza Hut. Carl Loretto was the guy who kind of criticized the McDonald's paint scheme from this year, calling it the McBland scheme, and now you've got him leaving Wendy's and working with Pizza Hut. I am very intrigued to see if we are going to see in the future a Pizza Hut scheme or Pizza Hut sponsoring NASCARs. I don't think Pizza Hut has ever sponsored in the Cup Series, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens long term if they do decide to come in. Nonetheless, it's pretty exciting stuff. He's working over there. It's a shame he's no longer working with Wendy's, but excited to see him work with a different company. Pretty interesting stuff. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ray Evernham. As it was announced earlier today that Ray Evernham will be given the command for the Cup Series race at Darlington. Ray Evernham, of course, a legendary crew chief, a legendary owner of the Cup Series, and also has got the SRX back up and running, and they're going to have a race at Lime Rock Park in late July. Ray Evernham, great to see him coming back to the sport, obviously with being throwback week. I think he'll do a really excellent and great job given the command. Was always done commands in the past. He's done a good job with them. I'm excited to see Ray Evernham is going to be given the command for the Cup Series race at Darlington. Pretty awesome and exciting stuff overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Bilicki. As it was announced today that Josh Bilicki will be driving the 92 for DGM Racing this weekend at Darlington. Josh Bilicki has made select starts for this team in the past throughout this year. He's had some decent runs, but has had some bad runs as well, but he's made many starts in the past for the team. If you want realistic expectations, I think he finishes outside the top 25. I think that Kyle Weatherman's done a solid job so far with this organization, but they've also had some very inconsistent runs throughout 2024. Nonetheless, a great opportunity for Josh Bilicki. I don't know how many more starts he has scheduled with DGM Racing for this season, but I'm glad to see he's going to get the chance and opportunity to drive for them this weekend at Darlington. I think he'll do an excellent and a great job with this team, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Logan Paul. Now, if you were on Twitter and Instagram yesterday, you saw Logan Paul's post. He actually went to congratulate Kyle Larson and spoke on Kyle Larson's win yesterday. Now, why did Logan Paul talk about this? Well, it was announced back during Daytona 500 week that Kyle Larson is a prime athlete. But outside of all the other athletes they've sounded like Patrick Mahomes, there never was a formal announcement on this from KSI and Logan Paul. But to see that Logan Paul's talking about this is absolutely huge. I have a prediction that Logan Paul is going to be at the Indy 500. I think he's going to be there. I think they're working on something behind the scenes probably at this point. I think it's pretty exciting to see that you have Logan Paul, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Logan Paul overall. I think it's huge to see such a big personality talking about the sport. It will get people talking and will get attention overall. Really excited to see Prime working with Kyle Larson. I think they've got partnerships happening not too far down the road. Glad to see Logan Paul's talking about the sport a little bit, even though Logan Paul's a controversial figure. It's pretty cool to see that Logan Paul is talking about NASCAR. Pretty intriguing stuff. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Natalie Decker. As it was announced yesterday that Natalie Decker will drive the 92 for DGM Racing next week or 2 weeks from now at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Natalie Decker's made select starts so far for DGM Racing. She actually led laps at Daytona, led around 5 or 6 laps in the event, and she scored a top 20 at Daytona. She was supposed to run a couple weeks ago, I believe, at Talladega Super Speedway, but sponsorship fell through, and NASCAR did not approve the sponsor that they were going to be using. What's interesting is Bikini Zone is going to be the sponsor for Natalie Decker that weekend at Charlotte. Obviously, she's going to have to qualify her way in on owner's points at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but is a really solid and good opportunity. DGM Racing, like I mentioned with Josh Bilicki, is a very solid team. They've shown some great performances. We'll see what Natalie Decker can do. It's a great opportunity for her. She does have to make the way in the show, I believe, but it's going to be a good opportunity. We'll see how she can do with DGM Racing at Charlotte in a couple of weeks. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Regan Smith. As it was reported by Bob Pockris announced earlier today, Right? Regan Smith is going to be returning to racing for the first time in about 4 or 5 years, and is going to be racing in some modifieds at Riverside Speedway in late July or early August. Regan Smith obviously has been working with Fox Sports for a very, very long time, but also was a former driver in NASCAR. Of course, won the 2011 Southern 500, which is kind of crazy when you think about this day. This is the day the Southern 500 happened. He's announcing his return to Riverside Speedway, I believe, up in New York. Regan Smith, I think, has raced modifieds in the past, so it's not a surprise or shock to him that he is, in fact, racing in a modified once again. It's a fantastic opportunity for him. I do truly believe he's going to make the best of it, and it's just cool to see that Regan Smith is getting back behind the wheel of a race car. He was a really solid race car driver, but he hasn't been full-time in the sport since 2016 when he drove for Tommy Baldwin Racing. A great opportunity for him. Wishing him the best of luck and glad to see that he'll be returning to racing at Riverside Speedway in the modified scene. Pretty exciting and pretty awesome stuff overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about John Hunter Nemec. As it was announced yesterday that John Hunter Nemec will be returning to the Xfinity Series once again in 2024, as he is going to drive the 26 for Sam Hunt Racing this weekend at Darlington. This will be the first time that John Hunter Nemec has raced for Sam Hunt Racing since 2022, because remember last year, of course, he ran full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the 20 car, winning a ton of races, and was also in the position and the potential to pick up the victory last year, battling Kyle Larson for the win. Now, John Hunter Nemec is driving for Sam Hunt Racing. Let's be real and honest, right? They're not overall the fastest organization in the world at times, but they've been fast at road courses with drivers like Sage Carrot, and they've shown some pace with John Hunter Nemec as well, and also at times Corey Heim as well. I do think that John Hunter Nemec is going to have a good chance and opportunity to be very, very competitive in this event. Obviously, they've struggled at times, but we've seen him qualify well. We'll see what John Hunter Nemec can do. It's a great opportunity for him. I hope he can make the best of it with this team this weekend at Darlington. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Team Penske. We've talked about Team Penske over the course of the last few weeks because of the big disqualification that came out for Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin out at St. Pete. And it was announced earlier today as well that Team Penske has done an internal investigation, and they have suspended Luke Mason, the engineer for the 2 car for Team Penske, Robbie Atkinson, who does a lot of performance work, Ron Rzuski, who's the engineer for, of course, Will Power, and Tim Cindric, who is the engineer, I believe, for Scott McLaughlin, or the president, of course, of Team Penske, for 2 races. So this upcoming week at Indianapolis for the Indy GP, and also for the Indianapolis 500 as well. Roger Penske, from my understanding, was not very happy about how things were handled in this situation, which is why these suspensions have come into play and have taken place. Obviously, they don't want cheating going on. Obviously, this is a really, really big story for IndyCar, because while in NASCAR, we've had disqualifications in the past, and a lot of people don't scoff on it. They don't make as big of a deal as this is. This is something that's very, very rare in IndyCar. So to see this happen is absolutely huge. And NASCAR, not NASCAR, but IndyCar, and Roger Penske especially, because it's the team that owns it. So I'm not surprised or shocked to see this overall, that these suspensions have happened. They were expecting to do some big moves over there. It's a big deal. There'll be more to follow as time progresses and goes on. It'll be a big story to watch for sure. Nonetheless, a lot of people at Team Penske have been officially suspended. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dawson Sutton. As it was announced earlier today that Dawson Sutton will make his NASCAR Truck Series debut next week at North Wilkesboro, driving the number 26 truck for Rackley War Racing. Dawson Sutton, for those who don't know, has been competing in late models for Rackley Racing over the course of the last couple of years, and he, of course, is the son of Curtis Sutton, who is the president and one of the co-owners, I believe, of Rackley War Racing. Dawson has a lot of talent, and I believe just turned 18 years old very recently. And he's going to be driving for a very solid organization, but an organization that at times has also struggled this year. There are rumors, from my understanding, or during this offseason, that Dawson Sutton was being considered to drive full-time for this team, but obviously that did not end up happening because he had not turned 18 until later in the season. There's a chance that we could see Dawson full-time in the Truck Series in 2025 at Rackley War if Ty Dillon doesn't return to the team next year. But this is a great opportunity for Dawson Sutton. I truly do believe he's going to make the best of it. He's a great talent, in my opinion, the late model scene. And it's good to see they're opening up a second car or second truck once again. We'll see how Dawson Sutton can do. I think he's a really, really good and a really great talent. And we'll see how he does with Rackley War Racing this coming week or next week at North Wilkesboro. Great to see him getting the chance and opportunity to drive for the team at North Wilkesboro. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NASCAR Xfinity Series. As Tommy Joe Martins and many people in the NASCAR Xfinity Series have been putting out tweets surrounding the Xfinity Series recently because it was announced a few weeks ago that the CW has already begun their deal and they're going to be broadcasting races in late 2024. And the CW has been meeting with teams in the sport. Many drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen and Haley Deegan, Matt DiBenedetto potentially, drivers of course like Sammy Smith and Sam Mayer, who we'll talk about in just a little bit, and Cole Custer. And seeing the CW get involved as much as they are getting involved with this is absolutely pretty awesome to see. And it shows that the CW is absolutely committed because they're expanding their sports portfolio for 2024 and 2025. And we know they're going to be moving over to a lot of the end of the year Xfinity coverage over to the CW because, of course, the CW is not associated with Xfinity and is expected that Comcast and Xfinity are not going to be in the sport as much later next year. Nonetheless, it's really exciting to see the Xfinity Series is working with the CW in a pretty big way. We like seeing this kind of stuff for sure, and it's pretty awesome and great to see that the CW is getting involved with the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Pretty exciting stuff overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hattori Racing. As Hattori Racing is teasing a potential return to the Truck Series for next weekend at North Wilkesboro. Hattori Racing has said that they're not running full-time this year in 2024 in the Truck Series, but they have said they're looking to run at least part-time in the 2024 season. Now, who could be potential candidates to drive this number 16 truck? Well, obviously, there could be some Cup drivers who are involved. You have Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell has driven for Hattori Racing in the past. He drove for them last year for a couple select races. I could see him potentially drive for this team at North Wilkesboro. You also have Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace has driven for Hattori Racing, I believe, in the last couple seasons as well. And I think Bubba Wallace would be a really good candidate for North Wilkesboro. He almost won there last year. He's only one of only a few drivers who could keep up with Kyle Larson throughout the event. I think Bubba Wallace would be a great candidate for this event, considering he won't be in the one truck because Brendan Queen is going to be in that one truck at North Wilkesboro. You've also got Jake Drew, who could also be a candidate to drive. Jake Drew drove for select races last year with Hattori, hasn't had any starts, in my understanding, planned for this year outside of Motorsports Racing. I could see him getting a chance and opportunity to drive for this team, though. I think more than likely it's going to be Bubba Wallace, but it's good to see that Hattori Racing is going to be showing up once again back in the Truck Series in 2024. I don't know how many races they're going to run, but it's really good to see that they're going to be coming back. They'll have to qualify their way in because more than likely there's going to be extra entries that are going to be showing up. Nonetheless, glad to see that they're returning. My prediction right now is that it'll be Bubba Wallace who get behind the wheel. Maybe they get Kurt Busch or Carl Edwards out of retirement to drive, but in my personal opinion, it will likely be Bubba Wallace. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Kansas TV ratings from this past weekend. As it was reported by Adam Stern earlier today that FS1 got 2.296 million viewers for Sunday's delayed NASCAR race at Kansas that featured the closest finish in series history. That is down only 2% from 2023, where the race got 2.352 million viewers. Considering the fact that this race was delayed for 3 hours, and it was on cable, that is still a very solid number. Unfortunately, Formula One did beat it, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But 2.29 million viewers on cable is honestly not that bad for a delayed race. Had this race gone live scheduled, I think this race could have had 2.5 to 2.6 million viewers. I really believe that. But because this race got delayed, less people are going to tune in, especially when you have 3 to 4 hour rain delays like you had here. In fact, there's a lot of people like myself who didn't even think the race was going to happen on Sunday. So for the race to happen was really great, and it was a fantastic race overall. Such a shame that there weren't as many people that could have tuned in, but I do think that, especially with seeing someone like Logan Paul talk about the sport a bit, I would have to imagine that there's a chance and possibility that we are going to see more talking about the sport in the future. Nonetheless, glad to see the ratings come out. It's disappointing to see they're not up more, but only being down 2% is pretty good, all things considered, considering you had a rain delay. If this race on main Fox would have had over 3 million viewers, and it would have had some huge numbers. Nonetheless, it's some decent numbers for sure, considering this race did in fact end up getting rain delayed. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Miami Grand Prix TV ratings from this past weekend, as they are absolutely huge. According to Adam Stern, ABC got 3.1 million viewers for the race portion of the Miami Grand Prix. That is the most watched F1 race in U.S. history. But why is this really significant? Well, it beat NASCAR for the first time. But there are a lot of major factors that played into a role. Number one, Game 7 of one of the NBA playoff games, which I think was between the Knicks and the Celtics, or the Knicks and the Bulls, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, was going up at the time, and the game went really, really long. It led into pre-race. So there were only like 5 minutes of pre-race, and a lot of people decided to go ahead and tune into the Formula One race on ABC. That's another big factor. This race was not on ESPN. This was on ABC, which is a broadcast network, compared to the NASCAR race, which of course was on FS1, which of course is on cable. But the third big reason is because, like I said, this was on main broadcast. But also, the other big reason why the ratings are up for the Formula One race and why this is the most watched is because, like I mentioned earlier, with the Kansas race, it got rain delayed. The F1 race at Miami, meanwhile, did not get rain delayed. So they were able to go live on schedule and on time. That's why so many people tuned in. Do I think this number is going to be sustainable going into the future? No, absolutely not. I think that number is going to drop significantly because I think that if Miami and NASCAR weren't always going up against each other, I think this could be a normal thing. But it still is a big win regardless for Formula One. But I'm going to see a lot of F1 fans in my comments probably telling me, oh, F1 beat NASCAR all straight up. And there were a lot of factors that really played a role in it. Still, do I think it's good to see that the F1 ratings were able to beat NASCAR? I think it is a good thing for them. Obviously, they're going to pat themselves on the back for having a really solid race. Because I thought the race itself actually was better for Formula One standards. It wasn't great by any stretch of imagination, but it was a decent race for Formula One standards as well, seeing Lando Norris finally get that first career Formula One win. It is good ratings for sure from Formula One, but once again, we have to look at the outside factors and the reasoning behind why the ratings are up. So, though, the numbers are pretty solid, all things considered. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Quaffle. As it was announced on Monday that Carson Quaffle is adding more races with Junior Motorsports in 2024. He'll have 6 more starts with Junior Motorsports in the 2024 season, driving the number 88 car once again. Those 6 races are this week at Darlington, then in New Hampshire in June, then a race at Indianapolis on the Brickyard, then a race in Michigan in August and July, then a race at this Darlington race during the Southern 500 weekend in September and August, and then a race at the second Talladega race. Carson Quaffle, in my opinion, is one of the best up-and-coming talents in the lower series currently at the moment, and he's been doing an excellent job. In both of his Xfinity Series starts so far in 2024, he has finished inside the top 5 in both of them. He finished 4th at Martinsville and nearly won at Dover, finishing runner-up. I think Carson Quaffle more than likely is going to win a race in the Xfinity Series this year. He has done an excellent job, and I think depending on how he does in these select starts with Junior Motorsports, because he's got sponsor funding working with him, if he does well enough, there is a great chance and possibility that we could see him run full-time next year in the Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports, which is why they're giving him more starts, because they want to see if he can do more than he's already done. Like I said, if you want my early prediction for Carson Quaffle, I think he will likely be full-time in the Xfinity Series next year, but I also do believe that he has a chance and possibility to win some races this year as well in Xfinity. I think he gets at least a win or two. I look at a track like Darlington, a driver's track. I think he's going to be great there. New Hampshire, a track kind of similar to Dover in essence, being 1 mile. I've got that race circle for him. I do believe he is going to be a threat and a serious contender to win with Junior Motorsports. It's a fantastic opportunity for him. I think he's going to do an excellent job, and I'm very happy and glad to see that Carson Quaffle is getting more starts with Junior Motorsports. He's done a great job with the team so far this year in a few races he's ran. It's a fantastic opportunity, and glad to see he'll be driving for them for 6 more races this season, as I think he's looking to run full-time with them in 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chicagoland Speedway. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Chicagoland Speedway in the last few days. Why? Well, a lot of people like myself have been pushing for Chicagoland to get back on the NASCAR schedule. And Denny Hamlin agrees. On the most recent action detrimental that took place earlier this week after what happened at Kansas, Denny Hamlin says that we need to go back to Chicagoland. Now, Jared Allen, who is his PR representative, actually said, would this replace the Chicago street course? Well, Denny Hamlin, I believe, said on this podcast that there's a way for both races to coexist. Going back to Chicagoland, I have been saying this for a very, very long time. The next-gen car races extremely well on intermediate tracks, and Chicagoland is ready to go. They've been having supercross and motocross races over the last year or so, and I think the track would put on phenomenal racing. It put on phenomenal racing in the Gen 6 era in 2018 and 2019. But not only that, the race in 2014 was spectacular. The race in 2011 was great at the track with the fuel mileage finish. Chicagoland, in my opinion, we all praise Kansas as much as we do. But I think Chicagoland would go up there and be up there on a level with Kansas. The track has multiple grooves. It always produced great racing with any car or truck. It doesn't matter. And I think Chicagoland will be a great addition to the schedule. I think there is a chance that it could be added in 2025. Some are suggesting even that there is a chance it could get added because we're not even sure if the Chicago Street Course is going to be around in 2024-5. We don't know if it's going to be back next year. We know they do have a 3-year deal with the track. I'm not entirely sure if Chicagoland is going to be sticking around. Not Chicago Street Course. And if you want to stay in the Chicago area, because it's no secret that NASCAR really wants to stay in the Chicago area going forward, I certainly 100% do believe that you need to add Chicagoland to the schedule. The racing would absolutely be phenomenal at the track. Multi-groove racing, beating and banging, side-by-side, all that good stuff that we see at these types of tracks. I think Chicago would be able to put on an excellent, fantastic, and an amazing show. I really hope NASCAR makes a decision and they do decide to go ahead and add Chicago into the schedule in the future. Hope they go back there. They should have never left there to begin with. I think it would put on a banger of a race. I really hope the NASCAR does decide to go ahead and go back to Chicago in the future because I think the racing would be absolutely killer and absolutely amazing at that track. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about charters. We have talked a lot about charters and charter negotiations over the course of the last few weeks, and it seems like they're starting to heat up currently at the moment. And there was a report that came out from Adam Stern that NASCAR has floated the possibility of changing a clause in its charter system that would allow a member of the France family to own a team in NASCAR. Kind of like how Jim France owns Action Express Racing, but it sounds like that the teams are not wanting this to go through, and NASCAR is looking to pull that away. There's another report that came out from Adam Stern that NASCAR is not wanting to remove the charter system, but they're kind of wanting to have an evergreen deal, kind of like they have currently at the moment that coincides with the media rights deal. Now, when it comes to the charter agreement, there are 4 key pillars they're looking at. I think it's 33% of the media revenue, 45% of the TV revenue. They're wanting the charters to become permanent, and they are wanting, the last one being, they want a bigger seat at the table when it comes to decision-making of the sport. Obviously, NASCAR is granted the teams are more likely going to get more money in both of those sets. But NASCAR is really, really tough on making the charter system permanent. Now, there's also a report that came out earlier tonight that NASCAR is looking to have a 7-year deal once again on the charter agreement from 2025 to 2031. However, according to the charter agreement and charter proposal that has been going out, they would not add those charters to be completely permanent. And some teams, according to reports, are absolutely just ready to get the charters officially finalized and done. They're tired of having the negotiations. NASCAR has been kind of doing the conquer and divide thing that they've done for many, many years, and they're trying to get the deal done that respective way. Meanwhile, you have people like Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, and Curtis Polk, who all work for the NC, which is the negotiating committee, who are trying to push for this charter agreement to get finalized where the charters do end up becoming permanent. Here's what I have to say about the charters becoming permanent. I can see both sides. On one hand, I do agree that having charters become permanent would probably be the best solution for the sport overall, because then you wouldn't have teams that are in jeopardy. But at the same time, when I look at the charter agreement, I can also see this from NASCAR's position and their perspective. They don't want to make it permanent, and they don't want the teams to have more of a say at the table, because if they basically do that, they would have more say in what goes on in the sport. And Jim France and the France family have ruled the sport with the iron fist for many, many years. They really don't want the teams to get involved when it comes to that. To me, when it comes to charter negotiations and deals, the fact that they've had people getting involved and basically there's certain situations going on there is very interesting. Now, if you want my position on this, I think a charter agreement is going to get done, and I will say this. I do believe there's going to be some people that are going to come out of this charter agreement extremely happy with the decisions made, but there's also a lot of people also that are not going to be happy with the decisions being made here. Nonetheless, it's going to be a big story to follow as time goes on. I do believe a charter agreement, like I said, is going to end up getting finalized. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I think more than likely will be at the end of this season. And now we're going to jump on to the first of three major stories of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. As it was officially announced earlier today that Dale Jr. will join TNT and Amazon Prime starting in 2025. On top of that as well, Dale Jr. will also participate in Bleacher Report, and Dirty Mo Media content will be going to Amazon Prime and Bleacher Report starting in 2025, I believe. This has been teased over the course of the last few months. We knew that Dale Jr. was not going to be returned to NBC and will not be part of NBC's broadcasting at all in 2024 as a focus on transitioning over to Amazon and TNT. This is absolutely huge for many, many reasons. Yes, we already knew this was happening, but this is huge. They're going to be able to build the broadcast around Dale Jr. Dale Jr., in my opinion, is the best color commentator and probably the best commentator that we have in motorsports today. He always looks out at the racetrack. He always provides a lot of insight, a lot of great commentary, and he always does a fantastic job on the mic. And for him to be the guy who will basically be the main guy over at Amazon and TNT, because they're bringing a lot of money over for him, I think it is absolutely huge to have him over there starting in 2025. The other big question to ask is who's going to be part of these broadcast groups in 2025. Well, maybe they can go get Alan Bestwick. And I really hope that Alan Bestwick is the one they do decide to go with as the lead commentator for both TNT and Amazon. Alan Bestwick not being part of NASCAR's coverage at the moment, in my personal opinion, is an absolute travesty and an absolute shambolic shame. Because Alan Bestwick, in my opinion, is one of the greatest commentators you've ever had commentate this sport. And I think Alan Bestwick and Dale Jr. teaming up would absolutely be huge. They could go get someone like a Carl Leverts, who I think would provide a very analytical analysis. Kurt Busch would be another guy I go with. I've seen some people suggest Mike Tirico, some who's worked at NBC for many years. He could be someone to watch for. And there's other people like Todd Gordon and Steve Letarte who could also go to Amazon and TNT as well. It is going to suck to not see Dale Jr. at NBC because he's been part of NBC for many, many years. But Amazon and TNT have a lot of money and have a lot in their pocket. They have a lot more money coming into play, and when Jeff Bezos has billions of dollars ready to be used, and he can use it on getting a guy like Dale Jr. Can't refuse. And of course, it's only 10 races that Dale Jr. is going to be working with Amazon and TNT, which is down from the normal 18 or 19 races we've seen Dale Jr. at NBC. But at the same token, same time, Dale Jr. will be able to focus on Dirty Mo Media, and he'll be able to focus on growing the sport. We have seen the Amazon and TNT really cares, and they're really wanting to put the effort in to make the broadcast really good and as great as possible as they can. And like I said, having Dale Jr. over at both those partners is going to absolutely be huge. And I expect Dale Jr. signing with Amazon and TNT. I think this is going to be the first major domino that falls of many dominoes that are going to take place in this broadcasting silly season. There's going to be some people from TNT, or NBC I should say, that are moving over to Amazon next year. I imagine that Steve Letarte is going to move over there. I could also see Rick Allen coming over to Amazon as well next year. We know Rick Allen's going to be going over to CW to finish this season, where NBC is going to produce all the broadcasting, but they're going to probably have an all-new broadcasting lineup for the CW in 2025. We also know that Lee Diffie is going to be commentating races at NBC this year. I think, like I said, though, having Dale Jr. going to Amazon in TNT next year is absolutely huge. He'll be able to call the Colt 600. And maybe in the future, if the new TV deals go well and TNT and Amazon are around, maybe they could find a way to have the Daytona 500 with Dale Jr. calling it. I've always wanted Dale Jr. to call a Daytona 500. I think he would do an absolute phenomenal and amazing job if he was to call a Daytona 500. This is a really huge deal. It's a massive deal for TV and broadcasting overall. It's just great to see that Dale Jr. will be going over to TNT and Amazon. There'll be more announcements in regards to broadcasting silly season as time goes on along with NASCAR silly season, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. Nonetheless, glad to see that Dale Jr. will in fact be going over to TNT and Amazon in 2025. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hyundai and hybrids in NASCAR. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Monday that amid growing sales for hybrids, prospective OEMs have started and stated that they will only join NASCAR if hybrid or sustainable fuels come into play. According to Adam Stern, NASCAR could add hybrids or sustainable fuels as early as 2026 or 2027. Now, if a new manufacturer wanted to come in as early as 2026, because they can't come in 2025, it was reported by Brian Murphy not too long ago that those deals had to be finalized by September 1st of the previous year. So by September 1st of this year, which is about 3.5 months from now, they would have to finalize them. On top of that as well, it was also reported by Adam Stern that while NASCAR has been in discussions with Honda to join NASCAR, Hyundai's name has also been in talks, and Hyundai is in talks conversations to join the sport as well. Hyundai is one of the fastest growing brands in the United States when it comes to car sales. Also from Japan, they have been growing relatively quickly. I think Ed Lockus, who's worked at JGR and Toyota, has been involved with Hyundai in some big way. Hyundai coming to the sport would absolutely be huge. It'd be another manufacturer coming in, especially if Honda does make the jump in like some are expecting. It would be huge to have potentially not only one new manufacturer coming in, but two new manufacturers coming into the sport. The ultimate goal of the next-gen car has always been to bring a new manufacturer in, and that's been the goal for the last few years. And we've been, like I said, hearing that Honda has been in major talks, conversations to make the jump into the sport. But now we've got Hyundai, who's very interested in making the jump in too. And like right now, if I had to look at who the top two are, it's those two manufacturers. I know that Dodge was rumored a few years ago to come into play, but obviously with the changing of hybrids, among other things, Dodge is building some other stuff where they're probably not going to be joining anytime soon. What also this could mean for the hybrid situation, if hybrids are able to come in, is that there could be potentially more horsepower coming into play. I think this is a big reason why NASCAR has been really hesitant on adding horsepower, despite the fact that a lot of fans, a lot of drivers, and even the engine builders have stated that they want to see more horsepower on this car. But if they're waiting for new manufacturers to come into play, like Hyundai or even Honda, it makes a lot of sense to wait, especially if it's 2026. That's why NASCAR hasn't touched, unfortunately, horsepower, which I truly do believe that if we really want to grow this sport, we need to add horsepower to these next-gen cars. If those electric components can increase the horsepower from like 670 horsepower up to 870 horsepower, I think that could create the great racing we're looking at on the short tracks and even the road courses as well. As going back to Hyundai, who could go to Hyundai in the future? Spire Motorsports, the team to watch for. Though I do think that more than likely Spire Motorsports will probably go to Honda if Honda joins, considering the fact that Spire and Andretti's basically working with them in some sort of capacity of Gainbridge. I imagine Spire's in the running. I have thought maybe SHR could go to Hyundai in the future, but obviously Stewart-Haas Racing is probably going to be sticking with Ford next year, considering the fact that we'll talk about a potential merger that is coming with Front Row Motorsports. But having a team like Hyundai or a manufacturer like Hyundai coming in would be huge for the sport. And I don't think they're the only manufacturer like Honda that's looking to come in. There's other manufacturers, like I said, that are extremely interested in making the jump in. Like I said a few years ago, Dodge was looking to get it and NASCAR name dropped it. At this point, it is kind of a situation is, do we believe it when we'll see it? But I do truly believe that there is going to be a new manufacturer in the sport as early as 2026. And Hyundai would be a great manufacturer to bring in a really big way. And having, like I said, new manufacturers come in would be huge. We've been talking about manufacturers for a few years, but nothing has panned out. But the fact that we continue to hear more and more and more about potential new manufacturers coming in, that tells you that we're probably getting a lot closer to having one announced. Like I said, when it comes to the body components, they have to be done by September 1st. And I would love to see some new manufacturers come in, especially like European ones as well, like an Audi in the future. Maybe another manufacturer like not Citroen, but maybe another manufacturer like Peugeot comes into play. Or maybe Mercedes comes into play. That's kind of a little bit of a stretch, but it'd be cool to see some European companies work out as well. Nonetheless, it's really interesting to hear the talk about hybrids and the talk about a potential new manufacturer coming in. I do believe we are going to have a new manufacturer in the sport. It's not a matter of if, though. It is a matter of when. If you want my early prediction, I think it could be 2026, but it would have to be announced by September 1st if it's going to happen. Or it could be the worst kept secret and one of the biggest kept secrets, and it gets announced that there's going to be a new manufacturer as early as this year. We'll see what happens, and I think Trackhouse is another team to watch for in this as well, and Kaulig especially could be a team to watch for to switch manufacturers in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR silly season. We did a big video talking about NASCAR silly season yesterday, but Bob Pockers put out a really interesting and a big article surrounding the next few months when it comes to NASCAR silly season. And Adam Stern actually quoted this around Stewart-Haas Racing as well, but Bob Pockers noted a lot of teams and drivers that could be making moves. The one thing that does need to be noted for a lot of these moves to happen, a charter agreement does need to be finalized. And it sounds like there's some teams that are getting very close to wanting this deal finalized. But once the charter agreement is officially finalized, I think there is going to be a lot of major moves that are going to happen. But let's talk about all the big things that were noted in the article. First, let's talk about Stewart-Haas Racing. According to Bob Pockers and Adam Stern, Stewart-Haas Racing has sent prospective buyers information in regards to selling charters. It is no secret that Stewart-Haas Racing has been looking to potentially sell as many as 1 to 2 charters at the end of this year. Why? Stewart-Haas Racing's deal with Ford comes to an end at the end of this year, and many in the industry expect that they are no longer going to be a Tier 1 team at the end of this year. And it would make no sense for Stewart-Haas Racing to be a 4-car organization if they aren't a Tier 1 team. They have drivers like Josh Berry, Noah Gragson, Ryan Preece, and of course Chase Briscoe driving for the team. Ryan Preece, in my opinion, is likely the odd man out if Stewart-Haas Racing does in fact end up downsizing at the end of this year. And I think Chase Briscoe is one that could also be on the hot seat. We know he's technically a free agent at the end of this year, but I do think that if this merger we're talking about in a second does come true, he might end up sticking around. Speaking of a potential merger, Farmer Motorsports is a team that is looking to expand going into next year. I know Eric Estep mentioned in his video earlier today that Cole Custer is a name that keeps getting brought up for this merger potentially or change where Farmer expands. However, according to new reports that have been coming out, multiple sources like Breakhard and multiple other sources, it sounds like Farmer Motorsports could potentially be merging with Stewart-Haas Racing in 2025, meaning that we could see a 4-car organization. The team lineup could potentially be Todd Gilliland, Chase Briscoe, Noah Gragson, and Josh Berry. That is if Michael McDowell does not come to this team next year. But there is a chance that Michael McDowell could end up driving for this merger that could end up taking place. If the merger ends up taking place, despite the great performance of Noah Gragson showing, I think Noah Gragson likely would be out. But Michael McDowell has been linked to another team, and that is Spire Motorsports. According to reports, Trackhouse could be a 4-car organization in 2024, and Michael McDowell's name has been brought up as a potential candidate to head over to Spire Motorsports in the 2025 season. They're looking for veteran experience. And we know that Zane Smith, like I said, they're trying to integrate him into Trackhouse Racing. Same with Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen, more than likely, depending on how his development goes, in the Xfinity Series this year, we are looking at a potential possibility of Shane Van Gisbergen moving up to the NASCAR Cup Series full-time with Trackhouse Racing. Kaulig Racing is a team that could end up selling their charters at the end of this season as well, and I can see Trackhouse purchasing those charters going into next season. But going back to this merger, this would absolutely be huge for Front Row in Stewart-Haas Racing. We have, like I said, mentioned that Stewart-Haas Racing could potentially downsize from a 4-car team down to a 2-car organization. And you could have a 4-car organization like Farmer SHR merged together, where you could have the Tier 1 deal stick around and their performance gets good, because Stewart-Haas Racing has shown a lot of improvement over the course of this year. and Front Row, they got a Tier 1 deal. So it would actually make a lot more sense. Now, if Michael McDowell does not go to Spire Motorsports next year, Noah Gragson, like I said, most likely will be out. Now, what happens to him going into next year? Well, I think he goes to the 21 car. Harrison Burton more than likely will be out at the Woodbridge at the end of this year. This is not just me saying this. Bob Pockers has stated, and I've heard some rumors that Harrison Burton could be out before the end of this season. Harrison Burton's future is very uncertain at the organization. His performance has not been good. He's only scored 5 top 10 finishes since joining the Woodbridge, and you look at the previous driver, Matt DiBenedetto. Matty D had a lot better performances at that team than we saw Harrison Burton perform. So I certainly think that Noah Gragson would be a much better candidate to get behind the wheel of the 21 car than Harrison Burton is. I can see Harrison Burton going into TV or working in the Xfinity Series next season. Going back and talk about some teams that could potentially expand. The teams that are looking to buy a charter. 2311 Racing, Trackhouse Racing, Legacy Motor Club, and even RFK and Junior Motorsports have been mentioned as potential candidates. 2311 Racing, we know wants to be a 3 or 4 car organization, and I think that the favorite for that seat could be Chandler Smith or Corey Heim. But there's also talk and possibility that we could see Chandler Smith take over from Martin Truex Jr. We're starting to hear that Martin Truex Jr. may retire at the end of this season, and I think that Chandler Smith would be the heir to that seat in 2025 if that was to take place. As much as Martin Truex Jr. has been doing an excellent and great job at Joe Gibbs Racing this season with the rumblings of Kroger's coming into play, I think the reason this is happening is because a lot of people think he's going to retire at the end of the year. And I think Chandler Smith more than likely takes place. If 2311 Racing does expand, Corey Heim more than likely will go ahead and take that 2311 Racing seat next season. I could also see Sheldon Creed, Eric Almirola being the running for seats and maybe get Carl Edwards out of retirement. But there's also some other rumors and rumors going around, and that, of course, is the possibility of 2311 RFK expanding. RFK wants to expand going into next year. They've been in the IMSA paddock, and they are looking to expand going into the 2025 season. You've got drivers in the lower series like Riley Herbst and Cole Custer who could move up next year. And you also have some other organizations and drivers like Haley Deegan, Matt DiBenedetto, and even Frankie Muniz who could be candidates to move up as well. Yes, if the one, you heard that right, maybe Frankie Muniz. But you think about SHR and Front Row going back to them. If they do, in fact, end up merging in 2025, it would be really huge for Ford because you would have a Tier 1 team that has superstardom. I think Tony Stewart wants to really stay active in the sport in a major way, and I think having this merger take place would really keep both teams afloat. Do I think this merger is going to happen? I think the fact that we're starting to hear some reports come out, I think there is a good chance and possibility. The most likely scenario and outcome that's likely going to happen, though, is SHR downsizing to a 2 or 3 car organization. They could have stayed a 4 car organization and been great if they gotten Kyle Larson or Kyle Busch even at this point. But that, of course, did not end up happening. Michael McDowell was rumored at one point to be driving for SHR even this season. At this particular point in moment, it's going to be very fun to watch happens throughout silly season. A lot of this stuff will likely materialize in the coming weeks. But it's still really huge to see all the rumors and rumblings going out. And it sounds like some big bombshell silly season moves are going to be happening very soon by the end of the year. Like I said already, though, it all comes down to the charter agreement being finalized. So, that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links go to more of that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think that the merger is going to happen between Stewart-Haas and Front Row? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Hyundai potentially joining the sport? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. We got a lot of great content dropping over the course of the next couple days. We've got the Xfinity Series race picks dropping earlier today. I did my Truck Series race picks. And then, of course, we got a lot of great content dropping like the Cup Series race picks tomorrow. And we also got the paint scheme throwback look tomorrow as well. Got a ton of great content dropping that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. And I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.